There's a moment in every man's life when silence feels easier than conflict, when holding back feels safer than standing tall, when he tells himself, "It's not a big deal, I'll let it go." And that moment, that one quiet nod to avoid discomfort, becomes the beginning of self-betrayal. You start small, letting a comment slide, brushing off the mockery, swallowing the disrespect. You say, "I'm being the bigger person." You think you're preserving the peace. But that peace? It's not real. It's rented. And the rent is your dignity. Men don't crumble in a day. They erode, one compromise at a time. You stop speaking up. Stop setting boundaries. Stop honoring your own truth, just to keep someone else comfortable. And the more you do that, the less you recognize the man in the mirror. We're taught that being a good man means being patient, understanding, forgiving. But when those virtues are weaponized against you, when your silence becomes permission, you are no longer virtuous. You are vanishing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But what happens when your thoughts are no longer yours? When they are filtered through fear of upsetting someone, through the anxiety of another outburst, through the belief that your needs are less important? That's not love. That's not peace. That's slow, spiritual suicide. I've seen men who were warriors in business, leaders in their field, go completely silent in their own home. I've seen confidence dissolve not with criticism, but with condescension, not with violence, but with indifference. And here's the worst part. They didn't even notice it happening, until one day they looked up and realized they were gone. Not physically, but spiritually. Their fire, extinguished. Their purpose, blurred. Their voice, muted. This isn't about blaming her. This is about reclaiming you. Because there comes a time when silence is no longer strength. It's surrender. And the world doesn't respect a man who doesn't respect himself. You think you're keeping her, but what you're really losing is you. So stop negotiating your worth for a false version of harmony. Speak, stand, refuse to vanish politely, because the first boundary is not drawn with words, it's drawn with presence. It's drawn when you say, without rage, without drama, "This is not who I am, and I will not stay in places that require me to be less." If any part of this sounds like your story, if you've ever kept quiet to avoid shaking the boat while you were the one drowning, drop a 1 in the comments. You're not alone, and this is just the beginning of your return. It doesn't start with a slap. It starts with a smirk, a roll of the eyes, a laugh that cuts deeper than any insult. Especially when it's in front of your friends, your family, people who were supposed to see you as strong, as respected. Mockery is poison. Not because it's loud, but because it's subtle. She calls it just a joke, says you're too sensitive, but inside, you feel it. That shift, that crack in your armor. You start to question yourself. Maybe I overreacted. No, you didn't. You were disrespected, and you stayed silent. Marcus Aurelius said, "What injures the hive injures the bee, and what injures your image injures your soul. A man is not built to be perfect, but he is built to be honored." Not worshipped, honored. The woman who mocks you in public is not teasing. She is chiseling away at your presence. Every sarcastic jab, a blow to your credibility. Every eye roll, a dismissal of your essence. Every "relax, I was kidding" after publicly cutting you down. A gaslight. And you let it slide. Why? Because you love her. Or because you're tired. Or because you're afraid of being too emotional. But let me tell you something most won't. The moment you normalize disrespect, you begin to unman yourself. The world watches. Your circle watches. More importantly, you watch. You witness your own erosion. And deep down, it eats you alive. You weren't born to be mocked. You weren't built to be the punchline of her jokes. And if she needs to shrink you to feel big, That is not partnership. That's predation. You think it's not worth the fight, but every silence is a surrender. Every time you play along, you teach her that your dignity is optional. And once a woman knows she can disrespect you and still keep you, she'll never see you the same. You'll become the man she can talk over. Laugh at, ignore, because she knows you won't leave. And then one day, you'll wonder why she doesn't admire you, why she doesn't listen, why she doesn't desire you. Respect is not just a feeling, it's a condition, and mockery is its killer. So let me ask you this. Has anyone ever made you the joke and called it love? Have you ever laughed along while dying inside? If so, type 1 in the comments, because recognizing the poison is the first step to removing it. Imagine waking up every day, not knowing which version of her you're going to get, sunshine or storm. She smiles at breakfast, explodes by noon, and you've learned to read her like a weather report. You scan her tone, her size, the way she shuts a door, not because you're curious, but because you're afraid. This is not love. This is survival. You start adapting, tiptoeing, editing your words, your wants, your truth, just to keep the peace. And with every step, you lose another piece of yourself. You're no longer the man steering the ship. You're a passenger on a boat that changes direction every time her mood shifts. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter retreat than in his own soul. But when her emotions rule the house, there is no retreat. There is only reaction. You are no longer responding with clarity. You are reacting with caution. You walk softer, talk less, anticipate her triggers like a soldier avoiding landmines. And here's the tragedy. You start to confuse this chaos with passion. You call it intensity, chemistry, fire. No, brother, it's pathology. And it will burn everything you've built, including you. This emotional volatility is not romantic. It's a form of control. Because when you're always on edge, when your peace depends on her temperature, she holds the power. She becomes the climate. And you? You dress for storms she creates. She blames hormones, trauma, stress. And sure, we all have bad days. But when every day becomes about managing her unpredictability, your needs are no longer welcome. You are not a partner. You're an emotional hostage. And the most dangerous part? You forget what calm even feels like. You think relationships are supposed to feel like this. Constant effort, never-ending adjustments, emotional exhaustion is normal. But peace is not boring. Peace is freedom. And you forgot what that feels like. This isn't about perfection. It's about balance, emotional maturity, mutual regulation. If you have to constantly downshift who you are to stabilize someone else, that's not love. It's emotional erosion. So let me ask you, are you walking on eggshells? Have you traded your peace for proximity? If her emotions decide your every move, drop a 1 in the comments. You deserve more than survival. You deserve stillness. There's a woman out there who can't live without attention, and maybe she's in your life right now. She posts photos not to capture moments, but to capture validation. Her skin is seen more than her thoughts. Her followers know more of her body than you know of her mind. She says it's empowerment. She says it's confidence. But you know, deep down, it's hunger, not for connection, but for affirmation. You see the likes, you see the fire emojis, you see the comments from men you don't know, and she calls them just friends. And somehow you've convinced yourself that this is modern love, that this is normal, but it's not. Marcus Aurelius warned of chasing illusions. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. And the man who builds a life beside a woman who worships attention never truly begins. He is a shadow. She is the spotlight, and she never lets it shine on both. You're the one who knows her secrets, her scars, her soul. But to her, the eyes of strangers are worth more than the depth of your love. She craves applause from the crowd, while you sit quietly in the front row, invisible. You start to compete with other men, with comments, with her online persona. You try to be more interesting, more affirming, more supportive, but you'll never be enough. Not because you lack value, but because she measures herself by others. And in that world, there is no intimacy, only audience. You become the man who holds her when the camera's off, but never the one she praises when the lights are on. And the longer you stay, the smaller you feel. Not because she shrinks you, but because she refuses to see you. Her phone sees more of her than you do. You tell yourself, it's just social media. But the truth is, her need for validation is a void you cannot fill. And the longer you try, the more your soul starts to starve. Not for attention, but for recognition, for being seen, for being chosen, not publicly, privately. Because in real love, the soul matters more than the selfie. In real love, the man beside her matters more than the men online. So let me ask you, are you competing with the crowd for a woman's affection? Have you become invisible in your own relationship? If this resonates, drop a 1 in the comments. Because when your soul is starved, no applause can make you whole. There's a moment when desire turns into dependency, when intimacy shifts from connection to currency. And you start noticing the pattern. She gives you love when you're pleasing. She withholds when you speak your truth. She doesn't say it, but you know. Sex has become a scoreboard. This isn't romance. It's reward and punishment dressed in lace. You crave her, not just her body, but the warmth, the closeness, the affirmation. And slowly you begin to trade your dignity for access. You ignore your needs, filter your words, become agreeable, just to be held. Marcus Aurelius taught detachment, not indifference, but mastery. He wrote about the triumph of reason over impulse. But here you are, crawling toward affection like a beggar, sacrificing sovereignty for moments of release. This isn't about sex. It's about control. Because when she uses intimacy as leverage, she becomes the gatekeeper of your self-worth. You become reactive, adjusting who you are to gain what used to be freely shared. Love is no longer given. It's negotiated. And it damages you, deeper than you realize. You begin to equate rejection with guilt. You start apologizing just to be touched. You stop standing firm just to feel wanted. And that is not masculine. That is not love. That is manipulation with soft hands. And the danger isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. Because when a man reduces himself to performance for pleasure, he trades power for pleasure. And in that trade, he always loses. You weren't built to beg. You were built to bond. But a woman who weaponizes sex has no intention of bonding. She's building leverage, not love. The truth is, real intimacy doesn't have conditions. Real love doesn't keep score. And a man who leads with presence, clarity, and calm will never chase touch with shame. So what do? You reclaim. You detach. You remember that your worth is not measured by access to her body, but by alignment with your own values. And when you stop trading your spine for skin, everything changes. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you had to earn affection by surrendering your boundaries? Has touch ever felt more like a bribe than a gift? If so, drop a 1 in the comments. Because love isn't supposed to weaken you, it's supposed to build you. At first, she smiled when you talked about your dreams. She admired your drive, your discipline, your late nights building something bigger than both of you. But over time, that smile faded, replaced by eye rolls, interruptions, and sarcasm that stung sharper than silence. What's the point? She says. You're obsessed. And just like that, your mission becomes a nuisance. You were on a path, clear, focused, determined. But now, every step forward feels like walking through resistance. Not from the world, but from the one person who's supposed to stand beside you. And here's where it begins to rot. You start adjusting, dialing back your ambition to keep the peace. You work quietly, defensively, unsure whether your victories will be celebrated or criticized. You build with one eye on the clock and one ear tuned to her mood. That's not support, that's sabotage. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." But how can you be one when the woman in your life mocks your mission? How can you stay aligned when she devalues what defines you? This isn't about her agreeing with everything you do, it's about respect. It's about honor. A woman who cannot respect your purpose will never protect your peace. And you know this. You feel it. Every joke about your goals, every interruption while you're deep in thought, it all chips away. Slowly, brutally. You stop dreaming out loud. You stop aiming higher. And worst of all, you stop expecting her to believe in you. Until one day you wake up in a life that looks successful on the outside, but hollow on the inside. Why? Because it was built for her comfort, not your calling. That's not partnership. That's possession. That's the slow death of purpose in the name of proximity. You weren't born to shrink your light to soothe someone's insecurity. You weren't built to trade vision for validation. The mission comes first, not because you're selfish, but because you're sovereign. A man who forgets his mission becomes a servant to moods, a prisoner to approval, a stranger to his own reflection. So let me ask you, has your purpose ever been treated like a problem? Have you ever dimmed your drive just to avoid conflict? If any part of that hits, drop a 1 in the comments, because the mission isn't optional. It's who you are. You thought you were building something together. 2 people, 1 vision, side by side. But somewhere along the way, it changed. It wasn't we anymore. It became me versus her. Victories turned into contests. Success felt like threats. And suddenly, you realized you're competing in your own home. She doesn't celebrate your wins. She measures them against hers. Her compliments are backhanded. Her milestones must be louder. Her progress, spotlighted, yours, shadowed. At first, you tell yourself it's harmless. You want her to succeed, of course. But slowly, subtly, it becomes clear. She's not just rising. She needs to rise higher than you. Her words start to cut. Well, I made more this month. My audience is bigger. They called me brilliant. And you, man of vision, of grit, of grind, you become a silhouette, applauding from the sidelines in your own story. Marcus Aurelius warned, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. And yet, here she is, tying her identity to outshining the one man who should have been her ally, not her adversary. This isn't power, it's posturing, because true strength doesn't compete with its partner, it elevates them. But the woman who turns love into rivalry will always keep score. She will weaponize comparison and call it motivation. You'll feel it every time you share a win and she shifts the topic back to her. Every time your light makes her shrink, or worse, retaliate. You start playing small to make her feel big, and in doing so, you betray your own excellence. This isn't a home, it's a hidden battlefield. And you're not her man, you're her mirror. She only admires you when you reflect her superiority. But here's the truth, you weren't made to dim down for comfort. You weren't born to lose in silence so someone else can feel like they're winning. Your worth is not a threat. Your growth is not an attack. In a real partnership, her light doesn't eclipse yours, it joins it. But if she insists on standing in front of you to cast your shadow, you owe it to yourself to step away from her sun. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like a competitor, not a companion? Have your victories ever sparked tension instead of joy? If you've lived that silent rivalry, drop a 1 in the comments. Because the right woman doesn't compete, she contributes. Every cruel word, every cold shoulder, every betrayal, explained, excused, wrapped in a tragic backstory. It's my past, she says. I'm healing. And suddenly, you're no longer a man. You're a therapist, a punching bag, a guilt sponge. You stay because you're empathetic, because you believe in healing, because you don't want to abandon someone who's been hurt. But what you don't see is that your empathy is being hijacked, weaponized, used not for connection, but for control. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." But this isn't revenge. This is corruption. Her pain becomes the shield for her toxicity. You bring up a problem, she brings up her trauma. You express hurt, she escalates hers. You start thinking you're the problem, that your expectations are insensitive, that your boundaries are selfish. You stop asking for affection because she's not ready. You stop holding her accountable because she's trying. You start bleeding internally, while being told to feel guilty for needing love at all. And every time you consider walking away, she plays the final card. So you're just like the others. And that one line, it cages you. Because now you're not just trying to love her. You're trying to prove you're better than those who hurt her. But love isn't proven through self-erasure. Compassion doesn't mean compliance. Her trauma may explain her behavior, but it does not excuse it. You are not a fixer. You are not a healer. You are a man. And your love should not be a casualty of her past. The woman who wants to grow will rise with you. The woman who wants control will make you feel responsible for her wounds. One empowers you. The other dismantles you. So stop confusing chaos with complexity. Stop mistaking excuses for evolution. And most of all, stop apologizing for asking to be loved back. So let me ask, have you ever felt guilty for expecting reciprocity? Have you ever been made to feel like your standards were oppression? If this hits home, drop a 1 in the comments, because love heals. It doesn't hold you hostage. It never starts with betrayal. It starts with just this once. A small lie. A photo she said she wouldn't post. A late text to just a friend. You flinch, but you don't speak. You feel it, but you don't act. Because it's easier to keep the peace than rock the boat. And just like that, your boundary is gone. Not because she broke it, but because you didn't defend it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But what happens when it is wrong, and you stay silent? When you see the red flag, and call it a misunderstanding? That silence doesn't protect love. It permits its erosion. You think you're being mature. That trust means letting little things slide. But in truth, every little thing is a test, not of her integrity, but of yours. Because here's what happens when you ignore boundary violations. She learns your limits are flexible. She learns you'll forgive without change. She learns that your standards are suggestions, not requirements. And she will test them again and again. Until one day, your relationship becomes a playground for manipulation, and you wonder how it all spiraled. It didn't spiral. It eroded, one unchallenged action at a time. You see, boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're values made visible, and if you won't enforce them, no one will respect them, not even you. And the more you betray your own lines, the harder it is to recognize yourself. You begin to tolerate things you once swore you never would. You explain away disloyalty. You defend disrespect. And worst of all, you lose the courage to call it what it is. This is not love. It's surveillance. You become a detective in your own relationship, reading between the lines, decoding patterns, replaying conversations for clues. That's not trust. That's trauma on repeat. And it all began with silence. So let me ask, have you ever kept quiet when everything in your gut screamed, "This is wrong"? Have you ever failed a boundary test out of fear of conflict? If so, drop a 1 in the comments, because silence is not strength when it protects what's destroying you. There comes a day when you stop explaining, not out of anger, but out of clarity. When you no longer chase or justify or negotiate for the bare minimum. When you rise, not louder, not harder, but stiller. That day is the resurrection. You've bled. You've bent. You've begged. And now, you remember who you are. Not because someone reminded you, but because the silence became sacred. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water." You are that cliff now, not cold, not cruel, but unshakable. She used to use silence to punish. Now, your silence is terrifying, because it is not avoidance, it is awakening. She used to control you with emotion. Now you move with principle, with discipline, with sovereignty. You're not returning fire with fire. You're returning home, to yourself. Your mornings are built with intention. Your speech is deliberate. Your circle is tighter. Your mission, uncompromised. You read more, scroll less, build more, react less. You no longer explain your boundaries, you embody them. The world may call it cold, but the world doesn't carry your scars. And now, you're dangerous, not to women, not to the world, but to the empire of manipulation that once fed on your confusion. Because you see clearly, you walk calmly, and you choose peace over performance, purpose over people-pleasing. This is not revenge. This is rebirth. She will feel it, the shift, the gravity. The non-negotiable presence of a man who's no longer afraid to lose anyone because he refuses to lose himself again. She may try to come back, not because she's changed, but because your clarity exposed her illusion. But you've tasted command, you've touched sovereignty, and no memory, no beauty, no softness will make you trade that again. You were never meant to be a slave to moods, a prisoner to affection, a casualty of someone else's chaos. You were born to command yourself, to protect your mind, to guard your fire. So let this be your gospel. If she cannot honor your presence, she does not deserve your future. If love demands your silence, it is not love. If peace requires your disappearance, it is not peace. You are not what you tolerated. You are what you walked away from. And if this journey spoke to something buried in you, if any part of this felt like a mirror, drop a 1 in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Not for vanity, but for the man you're becoming. Because when you rise, others will follow.